Money FM 89.3, the best of the afternoon update. The Afternoon Update with Lynlee Foo.
Money FM 89.3. Now, when we think about disruptions, most of us picture supply chains for food or retail, empty shelves, delayed parcels, but the same thing is happening in the digital world. For companies, the ingredients they rely on are software, chips, and cloud services, and those can be disrupted overnight, whether it's a new tariff, an export ban, or sudden changes in licensing. The result? Businesses risk missed deadlines, mounting costs, or entire systems grinding to a halt. So how do you stay resilient when the rules keep changing? My guest today has been working with some of Asia's biggest enterprises to answer that very question. Dirk-Peter Van Leeuwen is CEO of SUSE, a company built on open vendor-neutral infrastructure that helps organizations stay flexible in uncertain times. Dirk-Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Lynn.
Now, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome to Singapore as well. I understand you're here for a conference.
I am here on a business trip.
Okay.
I actually used to live in Singapore. I'm still a PR.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, so you would be familiar with businesses in Asia then, these businesses are watching tariffs, export controls, even chip bans change almost week to week. From your conversations, how is this volatility showing up in boardrooms?
Yeah, this is very much in boardrooms all over the world, honestly, because people do feel the need to become more sovereign. Mm-hmm. And just as you said in your opening, the dependency on software is as big as the dependency on hardware or food or whatever there is. And it can be shut down even faster. And with the geopolitical tensions that we sometimes see, customers are more aware of the fact that with the switch of a button, they may no longer be able to access their data, or they may no longer be able to process their information. So this is really a big topic for many companies around the world.
Yeah, it's not just an IT headache anymore, right? It's about business survival and continuity.
Absolutely, that's it. And so that then does come back, of course, to IT choices, because the dependency on single vendors that would be able to control your entire IT infrastructure becomes a risk, even though it may have been a benefit because you would have a single throat to choke. And it's probably often easy to work with one vendor who helps you end to end. But if this vendor is not from your own country and the political tensions may dictate the vendor to shut you down, then you suddenly have a massive vulnerability.
Now, some people say openness, open standards and open source can act as a buffer. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So we at SUSE are an open source company. That basically means that whatever our customers buy from us is free to use from an intellectual property point of view. The source code is available and customers do not pay us a license. So there is no intellectual property associated to what they're paying for. Now, this sounds very complicated, but effectively it means that they use us mainly to run the systems and make sure they work very well. Mm-hmm. Even though we create the products, we create it from freely available source code. And that allows people to continue to use it, even if we don't exist anymore.
Okay, so it's about flexibility?
Flexibility, openness, scalability, and mainly also for enterprises, the ability to benefit from other technologies that are being invented. And honestly, a lot of the technology that is being invented, including AI and the internet and cloud, what have you, everything that people are currently in touch with, has actually been developed in the open source domain. So there is a lot of this happening already, but you need to understand that if you're putting it in a proprietary cloud or with a proprietary vendor, you still have risks of being locked out.
Okay, but in some quarters, open source is still viewed as being less secure, less enterprise ready. How has that perception changed, do you think?
I think that perception is a very old perception, because these days, if it has to be secure, it has to be open. And I'm always saying this because the open source security is so tight, specifically because it's open. And what I mean with that is if you can see what the code looks like, and if there's so many eyes, thousands and millions of people who can look at the code, the scrutiny on the quality is much higher than if you have a proprietary vendor who provides you a security product with only a few hundred people looking at it. So open source is inherently secure.
Okay. And many organizations, I think, still run everything on a single vendor or cloud provider. That must be quite risky.
It is increasingly risky. Of course, there's massive benefits for people as well, because you can then take everything from one vendor, as I mentioned earlier. But now that the customers are seeing the need for using standards that allow them to move between cloud providers and to very quickly switch from one provider to the other. And also increasingly the need to find local cloud providers. And local providers are emerging in the industry around the world so that there is no geographical dependencies on where your data is stored. Often people now like to see their data stored in their own country, and they like to have guarantees around it. And that goes actually further than just the data. It goes about the support that you're getting. Can you be certain that the people that support you are in your country and do speak your language and are not somewhere else where they can be shut down or where your data could leak? There is a higher level of scrutiny that's currently taking place on all these kind of services.
Okay, so in your view, resilience, is it more about predicting the next crisis or about building the ability to adapt?
It's the ability to adapt. You got to be ready for the next crisis. The next crisis will happen no matter what. We don't even know what it will be. I think the recent geopolitical tensions in the world show us that they can happen very quickly. And when they do, people have to respond very fast. Most business leaders, large enterprises, regulated industries, banks, governments are preparing themselves for that and are talking about digital sovereignty as something that is a reality that we have to start preparing for.
Dirk-Peter, you work with companies like Hyundai, NTT Data, even Alibaba Cloud. What lessons are emerging from these Asia-Pacific businesses?
The key lesson, I would say, is the need for portability, the need for the ability to support multiple products from multiple vendors, the ability to move from one cloud to the other in an instance, and doing all of that while you can guarantee and support enterprise level and enterprise grade quality, because the systems that depend on all of this are highly critical to everybody's daily life.
Okay, do you think some part of it is cultural as well?
There's always a cultural part of this too, and people feel more confident and more comfortable to get things from within their own culture. That's definitely affected too.
Okay, that's interesting. So Singapore's push for digital trust, do you think that could actually give it an edge?
It could be, and I can see the need for that too, right? Every country needs to be able to stand on their own feet and support their own infrastructure. And that infrastructure doesn't stop with the hardware. It actually is very important to also have that covered on the software side. And therefore, people are more concerned about where is my data, who's using it. AI is a big factor when you look at data security and data sovereignty as well. Where does it go? Which system is processing my data? Because it's often very hard to see after you have used AI as a mechanism to process data, who really owned the data and how real was the information that you base your output on. Can you trust it? Everybody loves AI. They love what comes out of it. But what comes out of it is actually a result of what went into it in the first place. And so protecting your company data that you want to use for AI processing is a massive, important item these days. Because if it's leaving your house through the internet, then your entire IP may walk away.
This is really interesting to me because open source thrives on collaboration, and we are in an era of protectionism and trade barriers. So how do you really keep collaboration alive across borders?
Well, open source is about innovating technology, and it's more about the technology that we use than the data that we put into it. So I think that's a big distinction to make. The technology that we are developing, we see this being developed at a phenomenal high pace. This pace has only been able to be achieved thanks to open source, thanks to collaboration. And I'll explain to you a little bit why that is, because it has to do with the same concept of having millions and millions of people amongst whom there are very, very smart people that don't all need to work for the same company to create fantastic outputs and fantastic products. That's what open source is all about. It's we use the principles of meritocracy. So it's a system where people with great ideas can submit their ideas in the public domain, and then the groups that work on that, on the merit of the idea, will basically pick up on these ideas, create products and solutions, and you can then also build on somebody else's idea. And that creates the exponential innovation, because often in the past, we saw companies owning their ideas and protecting them with intellectual property rights and not sharing anything. And then first you would have to sort of like invent your own solution that looked like it, and then maybe you could evolve into something new. But now, because of the public domain and the accessibility of technology, the innovation goes at an exponential speed.
Dirk-Peter, looking 5 years ahead, do you see volatility as the new normal?
We probably have to build it into what we do and how we operate. And it makes a lot of sense for companies to be prepared for volatility and therefore have a multi-vendor strategy, have a very good look at data sovereignty. Don't use a single vendor strategy. Make sure that whatever you use, you have multiple vendors in multiple geographies that are capable of supporting you in your own geography so that you're secured for what may or may not come.
Okay, and if you had one piece of advice for a business leader in Singapore today, what would it be?
I would really look at where this is going. Talk to your suppliers, ask for digital sovereign solutions, ask for open source solutions, and make sure that you have a choice of vendors.
Okay, so resilience, like you mentioned earlier, isn't about predicting the storm. It's about being able to sail through it.
Absolutely. That's well put.
Thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today, Dirk-Peter.
It was my pleasure, Lynn. Thank you so much for having me.
And he is Dirk-Peter Van Leeuwen, CEO of SUSE, helping us understand why openness and flexibility are no longer just IT choices, but boardroom essentials. You're listening to Industry Insight on Money FM 89.3. I'm Lynlee.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.